Without further ado, Brina, welcome.
Well, first I want to thank Dorothy and the Riverside Public Library for having me here today. I'm very excited to teach you a little bit about drag racing. I'm going to go over some of the basics, explain some of the different classes, safety features, and I'm also going to talk about some of the women that are incorporated in the racing industry on behalf of Women in History Month. So first, I would like to start off, I was born in 1986. I'm 28 years old. I was born in Berwyn, Illinois. I grew up in North Riverside my whole life and currently reside in Lake Zurich. I went to Ames Elementary, Hauser Junior High. I attended Fenwick High School in Oak Park. And then in 2009, I graduated from Purdue University with a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering Technology. I currently am an engineer at Smalley Steel Ring Company located in Lake Zurich. There's over 300,000 square feet of manufacturing facility at this location. We have approximately 400 employees, and we manufacture retaining rings and wave springs. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have never seen any of these parts before. They're pretty small components, but they're used almost in every industry. They're in airplanes, trains, cars, medical devices. So even though they may not be seen, they're very important parts of an assembly. Besides our office in Lake Zurich, we also have locations across the whole world, in Europe, Asia, and South America. Now, what is drag racing? Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines a drag race as an acceleration contest between two vehicles. So drag racing is contested on a drag strip between two cars in a specified distance. And there are two types of drag racing that I'm going to go over. The first one is bracket type racing. This has a full tree, and I'm going to explain about the Christmas tree in a little bit. A handicap is allowed, so if there's a slower car racing a faster car, the slower car is going to get the advantage to start first. Breakout rules do apply, so if the slower car does leave first, you actually have to pick a dial-in, which helps you impose the handicap. Also, too, they race on the quarter mile or an eighth of a mile. Quarter mile is 1,320 feet, and an eighth mile is 660 feet. And each drag race is contested in a tournament or bracket style. So for the first round, if there's 100 cars, half of them will get eliminated. So second round, there'll be 50 left, and then 25, and so on. The second type of racing, there's class racing. This will have a pro-style tree, which I'll again go over in the next couple slides. These are typically index-based class races, so both cars will leave at the same time. They'll both be dialed 8.90 seconds as compared to the bracket class, which will have two different dial-ins. Breakout rules still do apply for this class as well, and they do race on the quarter mile and eighth mile, similar to the bracket classes as well. They are contested in a tournament style, as all drag racing is. So the burnout. Now, why is the burnout important? So the burnout process is the beginning of your race, and you're actually going to heat up the tires, and this allows for better traction. Now, traction is how sticky or the grip that the tires have on the track itself. And this is very important because you want a good starting line advantage, and if your tires are dirty or if they're wet, you might kind of slip and then you'll lose some ET and you might not run on your dial-in. So here's a video actually of the burnout process if you want to see. So at this point, I roll through the water and I stop in front and I do the burnout. So it heats up the tires, cleans them off, and then I'm ready to proceed to the starting line. So there's actually some laser beams that are in the boxes up here that go across. So they can show when I pass the first beam and then proceed to stage into the stage bulbs. And you can see the Christmas trees in the middle and they light up. So there's pre-stage and stage. When both bulbs are lit for both you and your competitor, then the tree will drop. And then the race will take place. So after your burnout, you proceed to stage, and there's the Christmas tree. Now the Christmas tree is the starting line device. It is called the Christmas tree because, like your Christmas tree at home, there's multiple colored bulbs. So it's kind of similar, kind of ironic. And there's two styles of trees. As I mentioned previously, there's the pro tree and the full tree. The pro tree is what you saw in the video where all 3 bulbs light up, and a full tree is when each yellow comes down. So when you're beginning to do the race after your burnout, you come in stage. So the pre-stage are the 2 top bulbs on each side, your side and your competitor's side. After you pre-stage, your opponent pre-stages, then you proceed to stage, and then your opponent stages. When all 4 top bulbs are lit, that'll start the timer. So either 1 yellow will come down at a time, or all 3 will light up, depending on the type of style of racing you're competing in. The green light will come on as long as you have a good reaction time or you're safe, and the red light will come on if you false started. So if you false start, you automatically lose, and if it's green, you proceed to race. So here's an in-car video, so you can kind of see from my perspective what happens in the car. So this is the burnout that I did. And then you can see the box, the black box in the middle right here. There's holes where the beams will come out. Now this is one of the most crucial parts of the race, because you want to beat your opponent off the starting line to have that advantage. So staging very carefully is a very important part of it. So this race was a complete quarter mile. So I'll go down and you can see the scoreboards that shows if you win, your times and everything. And then this is the shutdown area, so it'll come around. Now, safety is a big important part of this. I was actually involved in an accident a couple years ago, and thank goodness for all these equipment, otherwise I probably would have been hurt pretty bad. But there's several things. You have the racing suit. It's made of a really particular material. This is the SFI 5 rating, so if I caught on fire, I can burn for 10 seconds before I had second-degree burns. And there's actually another level up where you can go where you have up to 30 seconds before you have second-degree burns. The helmet, this isn't the one I was wearing, but when I did crash, thank goodness I had a helmet on because I did hit my head on the roll bar, and I was okay. You know, thank God there were nothing wrong. But then we also have the gloves. Those are fire resistant as well. And the neck restraint device. So if many of you might be familiar with Dale Earnhardt, but when he crashed, he died because his head whipped forward. So this actually, you put it on kind of like a backpack, and it'll buckle in the front, and it'll actually hook to my helmet. So if my head does end up flying forward, it'll pull my head back. It won't let your head have that movement, either side to side or front and back too. And then also we have protective racing shoes, which are fire resistant as well. So NHRA stands for the National Hot Rod Association. It's founded in 1951 by a man named Wally Parks in Glendora, California. The Drag Racing Association was founded because there was a lot of illegal street racing back then. I'm probably sure there is some now, but he provided a safe and organized place to race. And actually this trophy, this is what you win if you win a drag race. There's little ones and big ones, and this is actually Wally Parks holding a helmet and with his hand on the tire. So this is a pretty coveted thing, very hard to win. So. Now the NHRA spans from the East Coast to West Coast. We're separated by different divisions, with Division 1 being in the Northeast, Division 2 Southeast, and it works its way west. We're in Division 3, so it's basically Indiana, Wisconsin, Ohio, parts of Kentucky. There's over 140 member tracks, over 300,000 participants nationwide, and they offer 4 professional classes and 10 sportsman classes. Now I got my start in the Junior Drag Racing League back in 1995. At this time, the allowance for the age to start driving was 8. Now they lowered it to 5, but I did begin at the age of 8 years old. This is an 8th mile type racing, so under only 660 feet. And for the type of cars that you need, you have a junior dragster, which is considered a half-scale dragster with a 5 horsepower engine, single cylinder. They go about 40 miles an hour to 80. And the 80 miles an hour is closer to when you reach about 16, 17 years old. Here's a couple pictures back from when I raced. To start the car, you actually have a handheld battery starter. The cars I drive now, you have an ignition, so I can start them myself. But you can see my dad cranking it over. Top right, me and my mom in the staging lanes. This is pretty typical even for now. We might sit up in the staging lanes for maybe to an hour at a time. So it's kind of a nice place to chat with your friends too. In the bottom right, that's how we tow the car up. You hook it on the back of a dolly and bring it up with the 4-wheeler. And the cars I drive now, I actually can drive them up. So a little bit different, but definitely a great program. So there are 4 different professional classes. The first one's Top Fuel. And the second one, there's Funny Car. Now both of these have 8-cylinder engines. They run on nitromethane. And each car has a little over 8,000 horsepower each. Then these probably go, I'd say probably close to 320, 330 miles an hour in 3 seconds and a quarter mile. So they're very fast, very loud cars, pretty exciting to watch. Then there's Pro Stock Car, which are full-bodied cars, and Pro Stock Motorcycle. So the Pro Stock cars are V8 engines, naturally aspirated, which means that they're just run on carburetors with gas. And then the Pro Stock Motorcycles are 2-cylinder engines. And both of these classes go over 200 miles an hour. Now, for all the 4 classes I just showed you, these are heads up, so whoever gets to the finish line first wins, which is going to vary a little bit from the classes I'm about to show you. So for the sportsman classes, the entry-level class is called Super Street. Super Street's a 10.9 second index. You can have any full-body door car, any engine that you would like, so it's kind of an open combination. For this class, everyone is dialed at 10.9 seconds. So when you leave together, and when you finish, you're aiming to go 10.9 seconds. If your opponent goes 10.87, he breaks out and he automatically loses. So it's kind of an equal race in a sense, even though you have different size engines and different cars. Then there's Stock Eliminator, which I currently compete in. Stock's a pretty unique class. For this class, you have to have the same year engine that came in the car. So for example, my car is a 67 Camaro, has the same engine that came in that car. The rules are pretty restrictive in that you have to have stock interior, stock exterior. You can't really make a lot of changes. And just to give you an example too, my Camaro currently goes 10.8 seconds. And when the 67 Camaro actually came out in production back in 1967, it only went 15.2 seconds. So there are some things you can change, and technology has changed over the years, so picks it up a little bit. Then there's Super Stock, which is the other class I compete in. This one's still on a stock base level, but you can pick any type of engine for any type of car, and you can do a little bit more modifications to the car itself. Then there's Super Gas. This is a roadster or full-bodied door car class. It's 9.9 second index. So same concept, you leave at the same time and both dial 9.90. Then there's a Super Comp class. The car pictured is actually a car that I used to drive. These are for dragsters or full-bodied cars, and their index is 8.9 seconds. So you can use any type of engine, any type of car, so it's pretty open. Then there's Competition Eliminator. This class is kind of confusing. You can use any type of car, any type of engine, but the engine themselves have rules to them. And there's a lot of different indexes based on the car to horsepower. There's a weight calculation. So each car has individual indexes based off of that combination itself. Then there's Top Alcohol Dragster. Very similar to Top Fuel Dragster. They go excess of 280 miles an hour. They're either supercharged or fuel-injected cars. And then Top Alcohol Funny Car. So they're also very similar to the professional class, the Funny Car as well, that go in excess of 265. Same concept too, both supercharged or fuel-injected options. So to tell you a little bit about my racing, this is my family. Both my parents are here. My dad is the mechanic. the rig driver, and then my mom, she gets all the parts and supplies ready for us to go, and without her, we actually wouldn't be able to go because she runs my dad's shop. So we're kind of a team. We all work together. We each have our own portions that we work on with each other, and as long as we each do our job, I think we can be very successful with one another. Now here's a picture of the car that I drive. It's a 67 Camaro, 350 cubic inch small block. And as I mentioned, everything on this car has to be stock. So that includes the seats, the dash, the emblem that you stick on the side. I mean, they're pretty particular as far as the rules with this one. And then here's a picture of my other car. It's a Chevy Cobalt. This class is for super stock, so you could modify some things. The engine that's in it is a 350 small block. The Cobalt came with a 4-cylinder, so it's a little bit different. But just to give you an idea of the differences between the two classes and the things that you can change, both cars have the same cubic inch engine. The one on the bottom is fuel injected, but the car on the bottom goes 9.2 seconds in the quarter mile, and the car on the top goes about 10.8. So there's a little bit more things as far as the piston, rocker arms, other additions to the car that you can adjust. Here's a picture of our rig. We have a toter home. It's a fully equipped motor home with a kitchen, bathroom, shower, lounge area. And then our trailer is a stacker trailer, which has a lift in it, so you can actually haul 3 cars, 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom. And it's fully equipped with cabinets, and you can haul a lot of extra parts. Here's some throwback photos. I've been racing over 20 years, so I found a lot of similarities in the pictures we take now to the ones we took back then. So the one on the left is my dad and I back in 1998, and the one on the right is from last year. And here's another one. The one on the left's from around 1997, and the one on the right's from 2008. So things I've gained. I definitely learned about sportsmanship over the years, because you have to know how to win and lose, and you can't throw things around or swear or hurt anything. Unfortunately, there's a lot of kids that have done this, so you kind of see how to act, how not to act. The ethics in this, how you treat people. You don't want to be mean if you beat them. You don't want to cry if you lose. So you kind of learn about those values. And respect. I actually started racing in the bigger cars when I was 16, and I've raced against people 65, 70 years old. So when you have a young kid coming and racing with people that have been doing this a lot longer than I have, you have to respect the knowledge that they have. If you beat them, be respectful as well, because how would it feel that if a little kid comes in and beats you? So it works both ways, because I've been beaten by 6-year-old men as well. So kind of take it as it comes. Discipline, practice definitely makes perfect. I have a reaction time practice tree at home that I practice every single day, because it's not often that you can actually go to the racetrack and just practice. Usually when we go, we end up racing. So it's good to have that discipline and keep doing that, especially over the winter months. Then there's the 10,000 hour rule. I've read a book called The Outliers. They said you have 10,000 hours of practice of anything will make you a successful person. Even in my 20+ years of racing, I don't think I've had 10,000 hours logged in on the racetrack, but I'm definitely working my way there. Then there's the education portion. Even before I've gotten to engineering, when I was a little kid, I learned about engines because my dad is a mechanic, so he's the best person to learn from about this. But I learned how they work, learned how to fix them. The engineering portion, the picture on the right, is actually when I had my Corvette Roadster built. So I learned about chassis engineering, all the aspects that go into building a car. And then the math portion as well. When I was a little kid, I learned how to do math calculations based on weather to predict what my car was going to run. We actually have a full-blown weather station in our trailer that has the temperature, humidity, altitude that I take to convert into data that will tell me what my car is going to run in the next 5-10 minutes. Then friendship and family. I've met so many friends racing. The picture on the bottom right, the 3 people in there with me are actually still my friends today, which is nice. They all live pretty close in the area, and we do still keep in touch. And then everyone is pretty much like a second family. I couldn't tell you how many times if someone had a problem, their car broke down, someone will always be there to help, even if they're competing against them. They're definitely willing to lend parts, and I've had parts lent to me that helped me finish a race. And then the experience that I've gained over the years, I've traveled a lot, raced in 17 different states, all the way from California down to Georgia. Definitely met a lot of different people, learned about their cultures. I have some friends from Louisiana, so I've got to eat some of the food that they experienced down there, and also got to experience some of the traits or characteristics from friends in California. So definitely have the whole aspect of the United States, and fortunate enough that if I ever did visit a different state, I probably know somebody there that I can stop in and say hi. So March is very important because it's Women's History Month. It started in 1987, and it's very important to celebrate this because there's a lot of things that women didn't have the chance to do back then that we now do now. We have the right to education, which allowed me to go to Purdue University, the right to vote, and the right to work with equal pay. And then Title IX came about, which is the piece of legislation which my mom appreciates because she was a gym teacher, but it allows government funding for both men and women's sports in high school. I swam, played softball, and drag race, so this is definitely very important for me as well. Now, there are a couple women in the drag racing industry that started, you know, the route for women to start racing. Shirley Cha-Cha Muldowney was the first one. She was the first woman to be licensed to drive in the NHRA. She was also the first woman to win a Top Fuel championship. She was the first woman driver to win 3 back-to-back events as well, and the first driver to win 3 Top Fuel championships. Now the last 2, she wasn't just the first female, she was the first driver. So this is very important, especially in a date of time where men didn't want a woman drag racing. They didn't want her around. So I think in some aspects they didn't treat her very well. And there's actually a great movie, Heart Like a Wheel, that if you guys want to watch, it shows her whole life story going through all the hardships. Then a little more later date driver is Angel Sampay. She raced in Pro Stock Motorcycle. She's actually won 41 NHRA national events, which is the most of any female driver. And then there's Erica Enders. She raced in the Pro Stock class. Not a lot of women have been driving in Pro Stock. So in 2012, she was the first female driver to win in a Pro Stock category. And then last year, she was the first female Pro Stock champion. So there's a lot of firsts going on. You know, women are still trying to be the first one, even as you can see the most recent was just accomplished last year. So even though I don't have that many firsts, I do have a couple. I was the first female to be in 2 NHRA finals at the same event. This was in 2008 in Brainerd, Minnesota. I won in Super Gas and runner-up in Super Comp. And if I was actually going to win in both, I would have been the first woman to double up, as they say. So this would have been a really great feat. I am the most winning female Super Gas driver. I've won 3 national events in Super Gas. As you can see, 3. Multi-time NHRA national divisional event winner. So on our scale, there's divisionals and nationals. Divisionals are local, like on the map I showed, going 1 to 7. So I've won quite a bit of those. And I'm a multiple top 10 finisher in my division as well, and also at a national level. In 2008, I was 4th in the whole country. That's probably out of 600, 700 people in the whole, across the United States. So, and then last year, I finished 23rd in Super Stock. And just to go over my sponsors, my parents are my main sponsor. My dad and my mom own a shop right here on Quincy Street, so if you need your car fixed, come on over and they can help you out. But without them, I wouldn't have never gotten started. I would have never been able to keep drag racing this whole time. And then also another major one is the Chicago Steel hockey team. The owners are Donna and Bruce Lehmansheinen, who also live in Riverside. They play at the Edge Ice Arena in Bensenville, and it's a great time. We actually went out there yesterday. So it's a lot of fun for kids too as well. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
I don't have a question. I just want to say that this is perhaps the best presentation I've ever attended.
totally thorough, engaging. I think you really obviously thought a lot about it and
Thank you.
about what we would want on here.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I can't say enough good things about it.
Thank you.
Wish more people.
Thanks.
I wish there were kids here.
I was ready to go. Yeah.
Question for you. I've always wondered, as the Christmas tree lights come down, do the yellows go like, whatever, every 10th of a second or something? What I'm getting to is, do you leave when you see green, or do you go on the last yellow, or how do you game that?
Yeah, that's kind of, there is a set time in between each light, because there's actually two sets of trees. There's like a 4/10 tree or 5/10, depending on what class you run. So there's a set interval in between, and actually depending on your car too, if it reacts slower, you might want to leave a little earlier. If it reacts quickly, you might want to leave a little later. So you kind of have to find that sweet spot in between that last yellow coming off and the green light coming on. So if you leave when the green light's on, you're probably way late. So you kind of have to find that spot right in the middle.
Do you have an example of reaction times so that they...
Yes. So the reaction time is based on if it's 0.000, that's perfect. So if you go negative, that's too early, the red light will come on. So, you know, anything 0.005 is really good, 0.010. When you start getting to point like 0.04, 40 thousandths, that's kind of slow. So, I mean, it's so small, but it's a very important part of it.
So when you're practicing at home, do you practice then for different classes then?
Yeah, so actually I've raced in 4 different classes total that I showed you, Super Comp, Super Gas, Super Stock, and Stock. And I'm actually licensed to run Top Dragster too. So one class, all of them light up. One class I leave on the bottom, and another class I would leave on the top, because there's actually a computer where I can put a delay in where we have a trans brake button. So the trans brake button will lock the car, and I can floor the gas pedal and the car won't move anywhere until you let go of the button. So for the class that you have to leave on the top bulb, I let go of the trans brake on the top and a timer runs out of the computer. And when the timer runs out, then the car will leave. And then the other class, I let go of the button for when all the lights light up, and then I go. And then the one on the bottom, I let go of the button on the bottom. So there's a lot of different classes that I would practice switching, because at one point I was running 2 different trees. And just recently we acquired that Camaro. That way I leave on the bottom bulb for each car. Because otherwise you keep switching trees. One lights up, you have to be ready for it, or you leave on the bottom. So the practice definitely helps me keep both separate. Oh, yeah.
Are all your cars, both your cars automatic transmissions then?
Yeah, yes.
Does anybody do sticks anymore?
Yeah, you know, a couple people do, and the ones that do are actually really good at it, but they're not as consistent as an automatic transmission is. Sometimes their shifter might stick and it might not shift, so then they have to push the clutch and the race is gone, or they might not hit the shift at the same time every time. When mine, there's a computer that'll program it to shift, and it'll do it exactly the same every time. So, I mean, computer based on human experience, that's where the reaction time comes in. I can be perfect, but I'm not a robot. So every once in a while I might be late or have a slip up, but that's just human nature, you know. So.
What about the breakouts? If both cars break out?
Yeah, so if both cars break out, so say you're both running an 8.9 second index, if I run at 8.89 seconds and Brendan runs at 8.86 seconds, we both went underneath, I'm going to win because he broke out by more. So it's a big numbers game from the time you leave the starting line to the time you finish, because not only does your car have to run the number you predicted, but you have to have that starting line advantage too, and vice versa. So you want the whole package throughout the whole race.
And it's really hard.
Yeah.
And it's really hard.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just amazed. I guess I thought you ran against other girls your age.
Yeah.
Not against men and women and all ages. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's not many women. I'd say in my age group, there's probably five or six of us extra. I mean, in our area. There's probably 5 or 6 throughout, and then a lot of women race with their husbands. So you'll see a lot of wife and husband teams that drive around too. So, but yeah, and then the age difference. I mean, I'm 28 now. I started when I was 16. I race 16-year-olds. So it's kind of changing a little bit, but it's still fun. You see a whole variety of people, and you meet a lot of different people. So you hear a lot of pretty cool stories.
How about all the old guys?
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually a funny story. A guy I race with had a Mopar, and he had a couple Mopars, but I think one of them got stolen. So he drove to the house that took it. He knew who took this car, and the cops told him, you gotta stop doing this, because he was gonna go back there. Well, one day he got one of his cars back, and because I think two total were stolen. So he got the one car back, and him and his wife were driving around in the car, and they must not have phoned in that this car was returned. So he sees this cop car behind him, and he told his wife, he felt like Bonnie and Clyde. He's like, all right, you take the right, I'll take the left. He thought it was gonna be like a throwdown, because then 3 more cop cars came. So they thought he was the one that stole the car, not the other people. But you hear all these crazy war stories and stuff, so it's pretty fun. But yeah.
Question for you and your dad. I'm just curious, can you do it at this level? Do you have to consider it hobby, or can you break even, or make some money on prize money, or not?
Yeah, you actually can. It's very difficult. There's a couple people I race with that just race for a living. Some years it's probably very hard for them. I've heard stories, they eat at McDonald's every time they go racing, or they go by the footlongs at Subway just to get through the weekend. And then other times, it can be very prosperous. So I think there's one year we actually made out pretty well in the plus. I'd say most of the times you probably won't, but for the level of competition, it's very difficult to win. So definitely having sponsors like Donna and Bruce walked in. They're the owners of the Chicago Steel. So having people like them help, it's definitely helpful. So. Any other questions?
Right.
And if you want to follow me, I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I have a website, chytownshaker.com. So it has a full schedule, pictures, results. If you want to go, I'll check that out too. So.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.